thank you very much for making yourself available, all three of you. And a warm welcome to another virtual panel discussion at India Employer Forum. Today, we have a very interesting topic that is creating a contemporary learning culture. And we have three seasoned leaders from the learning and development fraternity to discuss this particular topic. We will start with Vidya. Vidya Gothe is Director Learning and Development at DXC Technologies. Lekha Palakkot is Director Learning and Development at Brillio. And we have Eric Lee James, who is HR Director Learning, OD and Diversity at Flipkart. Now today, we are here to discuss a very important topic, which is creating a contemporary learning culture. Now, learning culture help individual employees and organizations to thrive. We all acknowledge that, right? And the learning culture is essential for fostering employee growth and satisfaction as well. And most of the leaders, I'm 101% sure, will value learning as well. However, according to a recent Deloitte survey, employees only give or have less than 1% time available for learning, right? That's the harsh reality as well. So keeping that aspect in mind, how do we put learning at forefront? And how do you define a contemporary learning culture? And what are its key main elements or characteristics of a successful contemporary learning culture? So if we may start with Vidya first, and then we'll move to Lekha and Eric.
Thanks, Vivek. A very valid question, and this is a continuous question for L&D. Always we look from the different angle to answer this question. Yes, with the changing world, so many different avenues are coming and so many different methodologies are coming. So contemporary learning, how it is adds value, or how we need to encourage our people to continuously keep learning is a big challenge for every organization, is what I can see. Yes, it's building this culture of contemporary learning is not only the responsibility of L&D. Looking at the today's challenges, I feel business and L&D should go hand in hand to implement anything in the organization, especially the learning culture. The first point, what you made, even less than 1% of their what you call the hours they're investing on the learning, is it sufficient? And how do we make this mandatory? How do we make this as an everyday life workday practice to learn something is a big challenge which we all face it up. One thing what I feel is lot of new methodologies which are coming up. Implementing technology in the learning is one way possible. Second is leadership commitment to transform the team has to be there. Third thing is we should make it as a pull factor for our employees. The learning should not be pushed. They should feel, okay, it's kind of a celebration all time. It should be an interesting area, should be added. Then they'll come ahead to learn something, and it is easy for an L&D to implement anything in this methodology is what I feel. So a lot of innovation and creativity is required. Collaboration with the a lot of industry partners are required, like using previously when we started learning it, there was only the instructor-led session is what we believed. Now the different methodologies we need to adopt, give them a flexibility, and what you call all these other activities may encourage to implement a good contemporary learning culture.
Okay, interesting perspective. Lekha, what's your take on this?
So Vivek, I'll probably take a step back, right? Completely agree with what Vidya said, but from there, just a step back. And the way we define contemporary learning within our organization, the way I would define is, how do you actually prepare your employees with the required skill sets and capability to thrive in this rapidly changing and connected world? That's basically what we're trying to do, right? Now, if that is a requirement, we have, 10,000 things available through social media, YouTube. There's so many things which is available for our employees to go ahead and learn, right? How do I ensure that they learn what is required for an organization and for their career aspirations is something which we have to design, right? So the way I look at this whole contemporary learning in the way I would design it, right, and designed it also is something which focuses on having a very close engagement with employees, right? That also allows us to raise the curiosity of an employee, right? And hence increasing the learning quotient, right? If you're unable to define that, right, then we've lost the game, right? So I'll give you a simple example. I have a lot of freshers doing the program right now within our organization, right? And when we did an induction, they just joined us 2 months ago. So when they joined us, right, one of the common questions which we expected and we also were prepared to answer is, now we have Devin, right? What do we do, right? Why do we need freshers? I mean, that's pretty much the question, right? Because Devin is definitely a bare basics software engineer who could do whatever a fresher could do. So how do you answer that question, and how are you able to uh, train, right? Train is a wrong word, but what additional value are you giving to those freshers to ensure that they have the required competencies to thrive in this world of, AI and all the bots you have, all the dev? And I think that is what defines a contemporary learning for me. And the way we solve that, right, or the way we went back and expressed or gave answer to our freshers is, guys, at the end of the day, you still need somebody to drive Devin, right? Devin can do all the things, but how do you ask the right question itself has become a challenge. You have ChatGPT today. The problem is you ask garbage, you get garbage, right? So unless and until you ask the right questions, what you really want, you don't get it. So how do we get this whole contemporary learning? How do we drive people? Some of those, competencies, like how do you problem solve? What is critical thinking? What is design thinking? Right? So on the spot thinking, these are some things which an Devin or an AI would not be able to do it. For that, you need to do it. So I think for me, that's basically definition of a contemporary learning. And I think I completely go with Vidya, what she said, right? And one of the key things, and you also spoke about the Deloitte's research, which says only 1% of people have time to, which is true, right? Even though they have so much time to keep looking at the Twitter or Facebook and all of that, but they still have just 1%. So I think if we can streamline some of those, we should be able to achieve what we want to achieve, Vivek.
Thank you, thank you. And as you mentioned that people spend more time on social media platforms. So
Absolutely.
if we can make learning social, and
Yes.
we attach reward and recognition as well. So
Absolutely.
probably this will help to increase that less
Yeah.
than 1% to some degree.
Some number. Yeah. And trust me, technology does play a very, very key role in doing that. Uh, we do have we actually brought in some of the learning platforms where you have audiobooks, so that somebody can just, while driving in Bangalore traffic, so it's easier to complete one book while you're driving, right? 2 days on the drive and you will be able to finish. So we are also trying to see how you can, you know, uh, see, everybody learns differently, right? Every learner has their own preference of learning, how they want to learn. So we're trying to cater to all of that, not just saying, okay, you have to do a classroom training or a course on e-learning platform, but we're also trying to give them a spectrum of ways to learn things.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lekha. Thank you very much for this insightful thing. Eric, what's your take on this? And obviously, probably you are from a different industry altogether, so probably you will have a different perspective, I guess.
Uh, helpful perspectives that I've received, and I also realize that our world realities are very different. At least the kind of people that we cater to are also very, very different sort of folks. So one of the biggest things that we're trying to do in learning is how do you make learning relevant for business? So the way we do this is, in fact, one of the mantras that we follow very closely is how do we maximize learning for accelerated business outcomes. So any business would have been achieved finding a lot more mistakes and then learning from those mistakes and figure out. But how do we accelerate? How do you use learning as a very specific lever to accelerate business outcomes? So that is broadly one of our biggest mantras that we follow here. And for us, when we took a stab at defining what learning culture is, there were three things that we were looking at. One is how do we inspire people? So curiosity was one big piece. So inspiration was one piece that we were looking at. The second one is how do we engage people in a way which is more relevant for them? So things like just in time, where it makes the most sense for people to apply. And the third piece is reinforcement. So these are the three elements that we define as what learning culture means. And how do we continue? How does learning stay? Learning is not taken outside, like information is available out there. I think Lekha spoke about this. There is enough and more ways of which people learn. But everybody, no matter how the learner is, everybody ends up coming out with a business outcome that they are expected to do, right? So how do we help them? How, if you use business outcomes as an anchor, and how do we help learners to achieve whatever they are expected to do in a much accelerated fashion is what we look at.
Great, thank you. And one thing which we have realized that in a robust learning culture, it's important to attract and develop talent, but it's equally important to retain the talent as well. So how can organizations effectively foster a culture of continuous learning among employees? And what role do you think does technology play in enhancing the learning experience for the learners? Vidya, would you like to take this one first? I guess you are on mute, Vidya.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, very, very valid point. As all of us mentioned, and especially so many avenues coming up, you can enable everything, every opportunity for people to learn, or everything is available on your platter to learn. But how can you retain them? With a what you call a continuous learning culture, how you can make your employees to stick back to your company and contribute that. Very important point is encourage a growth mindset where mistakes are viewed as opportunities for learning and improvement. So don't blame when they try to implement. Don't kill the innovation is what we call it as. Give an opportunity at every level for creativity and innovation. Give them an opportunity to learn and implement new things that will help, even though I don't have a specific role to deploy a person. For example, if I train them on the Gen AI new tools, and I may not have any immediate business available with my client to make them to work, but give them a platform, give them an environment, and allow them to implement those things, allow them to make mistakes and practice. This will create a kind of a ownership and the what you call a good binding with your organization. This itself will be a great retention. Means people may not think, oh, they are also developing me, also giving me an opportunity to stay back and implement, practice that learning in my environment. A simple example, Vivek, we did almost around 60 plus employees. We trained them on enterprise architect roles. And we may not have immediately the role called enterprise architect where I can deploy them. But if they definitely add that those skills, what they learn in their profile, it is easy to get picked by many organizations because they'll search in the Naukri.com as an enterprise architect. So it was a big challenge for us to retain that talent, which is really put a lot of investment, lot of efforts on learning. Yes, and give them an opportunity. So creating an internal opportunity, creating hand leadership involvement may help us to retain those people is what I feel. Yes, so it is an integrated everyday work. We need to make them to feel they have an opportunity to implement and practice that. Rewards recognition is one which you called out. Reward people who learn effectively, not with a negative approach. Don't punish for not learning, instead of reward people when they learn it. These are some things will definitely help a good retention. And technologies, as we all are speaking, there are many options which are coming up, will help us to train our people, like virtual reality, mobile app, as you mentioned, the reading a book over the what you call video audio books, as gamification methodology. We are planning to train a Gen AI leader dashboard every week, publishing it on it and releasing that week module, so that people who complete, there will be an end of the week, there will be a gamification activity, and people who completed will participate and they can see their scorecard. That itself will interest them to do. I have not yet done it. I'm talking to many vendors to implement this, working on putting up that platform as of now. So there are many avenues is what I can say. I practically what I do is what I'm trying to explain it to you.
Great. Thanks, Vidya. Lekha, your take on this?
Sure. So, if you're able to, as an organization, if you're able to answer the question, what's in it for me? Right. I think that's a great story, or that's a great, I mean, lack of better word, carrot for people to hold on to, right? And this is something which we have seen, which we have done in our organization, in the current organization where I'm functioning, and we've seen results, right? So what we have done is we're telling employees, see, all this while the managers would know that, this guy is a good performer, and in next 1 or 2 years the person can be promoted, and that conversation either happens or that conversation is only happening in manager's mind, right? Today what we have done is we have put an entire career architecture framework for all employees, right, where we are saying that, if you're in a current role, these are 10 skills you should have, these are 10 competencies you should have, right? And it is crystal clear, transparent to everybody, so there is no confusion at the end of the year, right? Now, in that career architecture framework, what we are also asking, let's say Lekha is the employee, we are asking Lekha to choose your aspiration also. And then the tool will automatically throw all the skill sets required for the aspirations you have picked up, right? And it'll also show you the gaps which you have from your current role to your aspired role. Now, this is all absolutely transparent between the manager and an employee as Lekha, right? So the conversation between an employee and a manager is as transparent as it could be, and say, Lekha, if you develop on all these skills, right, you have probably met, let's say, 50% of the criteria to be promoted, or 50% of criteria to move into your aspired role, right? So I think that is one of the biggest retainers for us, right? Because one, there's a lot of focus from the organization on the employees' aspirations, career aspirations, right? While we do a top-down approach of learning, where we are saying that your project needs this, your customer needs this, so please get into a classroom and do Python, for example. But from a bottom-up approach, what we are also figuring out is, Lekha, what is your aspirations, right? Where do you want to go from 1 year from now? And that aspirations could be like 2 steps from now, right? Or 3 years from now. But as an organization, what I'm telling employee is, if you do this, if you want to achieve what you want to achieve as an aspired role, this is the path you pick. And if you're able to do whatever is asked to do, right? And that could be training, that could be mentoring, that could be certification. There's a gamut of things which we have plugged in, right, in between, and said, hey, employee, this is what the path you should do, and you will be able to do. Now, why is it good, right? When we take a feedback from employees, they say the one common word which they use is, this is very transparent, right? It clearly gives me or tells me what I should do to achieve what I want to achieve, right? I'm not saying this resolves all my attrition issues, but there's a lot of focus and there's a lot of traction on this whole rollout which we which we have done, and employees seem to be happy about doing these things, right? And when we roll out all these things, then when we put the whole learning journey, it includes all that Vidya said, right? Giving them a platform to practice, even though I think she spoke about enterprise architect, right? We might not have those roles at this point of time, but if somebody is aspiring to do that, aspiring to become that, we provide them the learning and we also give them the platform to learn, right? They could fail, but they can still learn. So I think that's basically what we have from my organization, Vivek. That's how we deal with it right now.
Okay. And anything on leveraging the technology as you are Brillio?
Absolutely. I mean, technology, gamification is definitely one of our core things, right? So some of very org-wide programs which we drive. So we were just driving the project management competency, right? So dashboards and gamification way is definitely a healthy competition. Our overall learning experience platform puts up a gamified option. So every day you can log in and see who are the top 5 learners in the organization. That's across the organization, right? So there is a little bit of competition there. It also gives you what badges you have taken, what certifications you have. So it's that is one way. As I said initially, the learning platform which we use is also a lot more, it's AI driven, it's a lot more futuristic, if I may call. You have um, lot of content in different forms and shapes, which we could definitely use, Vivek.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lekha. Eric?
I think you've asked 2 questions. So the way they would like to look at it is maybe I'll take the technology question first and then sort of go down the other part. So from a technology's point, there are various entry points in a learner's journey. So the first entry point definitely is during the time post the workshop. So post any workshop or something like that, most learners end up learning a lot of skills, but when they go for application, there's no technology associated with application. So that is one use case that we're trying to look at, and it's not something that we created, but it's called moments of time, where you say that you engage with a learner at the moment of time when the person is about to apply a particular skill at this point of time. So we're using technology there, where we are nudging people using bots, where we nudge people a day before, a day during that day, and a day after time of application, and look at confidence of the learners in applying skills and what is their insights that they gather from that. So that's how we're using technology there. The second place where we are also using technology, and we do a lot of leader assimilations into the company, and there are a lot of copious notes that all of us take up. So we use technology to synthesize many of these notes and pick up learnings with respect to that. The third place we also use technology is we also have a lot of systems like performance management, tools to collect feedback, etc. We summarize all of that and say, see, at the end of the day, the learner is a single person. Different teams come together and sort of uh, use the same, deploy things at the same person. So how do we look at different nodes in the journey, collect all those inputs, and synthesize and say, what are we saying for this person for this year? So that's also another way we use technology. We are now planning to use technology in delivering certain content and certain learning when there is a need. For example, let's say I am preparing for a check-in conversation, and I think most organizations would work on check-ins. A day before or 1 week before, they need to prepare. So what usually happens is, hey, are you ready? So that there is a bot that pings them saying, hi, hey, are you ready for this conversation? How prepared are you, etc. And then we use learning paths, 2-3 minute videos, which give them at least a toolkit for them to prepare a little more before they prepare for the conversation. It doesn't end there. After the conversation, they say how did the conversation go, what happened, etc. So that's how we're using technology to actually connect with moments which matters for the employee, and how do you make learning relevant for that person. The first question that you asked is retention of employees.
How do you foster a culture of continuous learning?
Yeah, and through through retaining them at a lot more times, right? So for me, retention right now is not only compensation alone. There are multiple other factors. Compensation is usually the last resort where somebody looks at. In fact, there are much more pull factors. There's much more push from the organization before they get pulled into another organization. We are using learning as a critical lever for two cohorts of for people. One is top talent in our team. How do we use learning as a lever to make it to get higher order skills? For example, strategic thinking. It could be so there is Web 4.0 that we are looking at, or there is Gen AI skills. So how do we look at some of these learning takes, but we also look at relevant use cases that they will go ahead and apply and give back to the organization. Because these are top performing employees, so they definitely have to work on use cases which will make it relevant. The second place that we are also looking at is how do we solve for the build versus buy problem for women employees, especially if you want to get women leaders to the top, right? Like at least an SD plus sort of cohort, we have a very small representation there. So how do we, while the TA team and the recruitment team works towards hiring people from outside, how do we end up looking at a horizon for the next 1.5 years, 2 years, and build leaders so that they get ready for the promotion cycle? There is no guaranteed promotions that happen, but data says very, very differently. So once they go through a learning program and they learn certain soft skills and the way they show up for meetings and very influential meetings, etc., that is also making learning relevant for them, and that helps them when they are put up for a promo, because they show up better, much better with respect to that. So it's a build versus buy thing that we are also looking at. So these are places where we've experimented with, and we've saw some success. Of course, answer is not completely there, but that is how learning is being relevant for these things.
Great. Okay. So this brings to my next question. So I would like to know that what are some common challenges organizations face while cultivating or maintaining a contemporary learning culture, and how can one overcome these challenges? So since you are veterans and you have implemented it successfully, and you are also maintaining that culture as well, that learning culture as well. So since you have done it yourself, so I would like to hear from the horse's mouth that what challenges you guys faced, and how did you overcome those challenges? If we can start with Vidya or Lekha, you want to go first on this?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. The biggest challenge is, as in any industry you take, when Eric was explaining, I felt he took a very good example of diversity training, and most of in their industry, what I feel is aligning to their roles, like immediately before they put on to the work, they're being trained. It will be the knowledge will be well retained and placed. So that was a very good example. I just wanted to call out those things are very good in the industry where Eric comes from, but in our industry, it is little difficult, I feel, because always we look for futuristic means. To the client, we need to show the percentage of transformation on those areas, then we get sometimes a business on those skills. A simple example is a Gen AI. If my leadership keeps on asking what percentage, what all the skills in the AI and Gen AI we can quote in our RFP to get a new business. Yes, in that condition, we have to train in advance, but the problem is resistance to change. It's easy sometimes for the junior employees to show a carrot and train them or give them some good reward recognitions, but the senior, it is not only the technical transformations stuff, including building those emotional intelligence, building those strategic thinking, those skills also, it's not an easy cup of tea. And especially the storytelling skills and all, it's people, it is not so easily can adopt those things. So the resistance comes from the people, and how we can make learning interesting for them to change. Especially Vivek, in my previous organization, we used to do for such skills some of those outbound activity based programs, which used to help me to do the transformation with the strategic thinking, critical thinking, innovations and all. But moving after the COVID, being still we are in virtual first, I'm still not at looking for any outbound activities. And sometimes bringing such leadership programs and bringing that change becomes tougher. Technical transformation is sometimes easy, but leadership skills development in these areas is definitely we need to be very innovative and very creative approaches we may have to adopt to bring that change in our employees, or bring that learning environment is what I feel. Okay, so the solutions are technology integration and what you call bringing up of a new approaches, and a leadership being a role model for some of those things. We need to train leaders. They need to talk in those town halls, say that this is the way, the destination is here. You need to bring all these skills in you. That commitment and the role model attitude of leaders helps us to implement a lot of things. Simple thing is when we introduced for AI and Gen AI, we introduced an AI convergent program across organization. And we published the top leaders completion, some of those videos and reports that made me to help improve my learning percentage of the completion of AI convergent program. So these are some of the steps which we try to take to improve what you call the resistance and people to adopt a learning culture.
Okay, thanks, Vidya. Lekha?
I'll continue on the resistance to change itself, Vivek, right? Because we keep handling that day in, day out. So what Vidya spoke about is resistance from the employees to learn in a certain way or something. There is top down also, there is a lot of resistance, right? And I'll give you an example. Uh, we all know YouTube is the biggest content place, right? Now I'm sure all of us have learned something or the other from YouTube, right? We don't just use it for watching movies or clips or whatever it is, but we learn also from. But when we package something, right, where we say, okay, this is something which you can learn from YouTube, my leaders come back and say, hey, can we have something more professional? Right. And this is something coming from a biggest content provider. I mean, what I understand when they say professional, right? We get that. But the kind of content what you have in YouTube, you don't have in any other learning platform, right?
Yes.
So so the resistance to change is from both the sides, right? Employees do not want to do certain things, and then there's a common thing: can we do a classroom training? I think that whole era of getting everybody, and with COVID and after COVID, this whole thing of classroom training has completely, I mean, it's still not gone, but people are out of it, right? It's very, very difficult for us to get 20 people in the classroom and do a classroom training. So I think resistance to change from top, from leaders and from employees is the biggest challenge, right? And along with that, overemphasis of formal learning. I mean, there's so much of, while we all talk about, 70, 20, 10, but there are a lot of us who still say that we need to look at a very formal learning. So I think those two are the biggest challenge. The other thing, specifically, if I talk about my organization, which is a services organization, right? Our whole focus is on delivery, right? The the inflexible work environment, right? Not environment, the working hours, if I may call, right? We work day in, day out, and then there is a customer call happening. The customer raises a P0 issue. We leave everything and we go for that. One of our values is customer advocacy, which means we are there for customer first, right? So what happens is it becomes very, very difficult. And I think that's why Deloitte has that 1% number, right? Because it becomes very, very difficult for employees to segregate that 1 hour or 2 hour per day and say, I will learn and I will not do anything else, right? I don't know, as an ecosystem, we support, even if the employee makes that decision, as an ecosystem, not just my organization, and in my previous organization, we have had this challenge, right? I have a customer call, I have a client call, something like that, and then the person moves off, right? The last thing which I wanted to talk about, as a, it's not a big thing, but it's still a resistance. So whatever we are doing as an organization, right? How much ever you do communicate, to people. There is a lack of communication or a clarity in what we communicate to the entire organization. So these are some of the biggest challenges which we face on an ongoing basis, Vivek, right? Now, if I have to say, how do we put these things in perspective, right? And one of the key things for me is, I think Vidya did touch upon, we need a lot of commitment from leaders to support us to push this through, right? Now, my challenge is it's not my leaders, right? And when I say leaders, the CEO, the CDOs and CFOs of the world, they're absolutely aligned. While we do a two slide presentation, he say this is how we're going to run this and this is the impact, they're gaga over it. The problem comes when we get to the mid-level managers, right? The whole focus at that level is delivery, right? There, it's constant. So then at that level, how do we sensitize every manager to ensure that the employee can plug in a 1 hour of learning through their journey, through their day? That is something, if we are able to do that, I think we are able to get through this, right? And aligned to that is, if I have a flexible work environment, then I think we are kind of sorted. And to my initial point, resistance to change, uh, while everybody has their own ways, and that was one of the reasons when we plugged in our new LXP, we wanted to ensure that we at least cater to people who have different kind of learning preferences, right? We are not forcing them to learn through just courses by reading. They can hear, they can learn, they can do videos, they can do practice labs, they can do books, they can read white papers. All of these are available on our platform for our employees to consume, Vivek.
Lekha, if you don't mind, which LXP you are having?
We're using Skillsoft.
Skillsoft. Okay. We had Skillsoft before. Now we have Udemy and LinkedIn.
Okay. I'll go the
We
other way. We
shifted
had
from
Udemy.
Skillsoft.
We had Udemy and LinkedIn. We moved to,
Right.
and I'll tell you why we exactly moved in, because if you remember, my first conversation when I spoke about was my whole career architecture framework which we put in. So there was a tool which it's an entire system which is in place, right? We worked with Mercer and Aon to put that whole system in place. So we had a little bit of challenge for Udemy to integrate with that, because when we identify the gaps, right, we wanted to go back to the employee and say automatically integrate it with the LXP and say these are the learnings which we have, which is aligned to your gaps, right? So that was a little trouble with Udemy. LinkedIn, we did not have a problem, but the issue which we had, because of which we had to say no, they would not allow you to upload your own content, right? So I have instructional designers who create content for our domain program. So we function in multiple verticals. So healthcare, BFSI, media communication. So for all of these, we have account assimilation or a domain assimilation kind of program where we do 101 programs, 201 programs, 301 programs. So we create that content because it is with our SMEs, right? And we wanted to upload it, and LinkedIn would not allow us to do that. So we wanted to move out of LinkedIn. Sorry, Vivek, we took a little off.
No, but it was quite interesting. Thank you, Lekha.
Perfectly
No
fine.
problem.
They can't,
Yeah.
Vidya, no worries. Yeah. Thank you. So, Eric, what's your take on this?
So I think one of the biggest challenges that I face is how do you make learning a priority for that individual? And issue is, I think there's only so many hours a day, and there are so many things thrown at that individual. Making learning a priority itself is a big task. In this. So that is one. The second piece that is more critical right now is how do you get people to reflect? I like what Lekha mentioned about 70-20-10. A large part of the learning happens in the 70. And the issue with that is people continue to do a lot of work without realization of what shifts they are making personally to actually enhance their learning. So how do you make reflection a reality? Because there's just so much happening there. So that is another challenge that we have. So getting our learners to do that. And the last piece is how do we use micro learning? And this is hybrids that I'm talking about, where we looking at the online content as a way of assimilation or acquiring knowledge, and use an offline space as a way of reflecting and then figuring out the insights that come about, and then how I go about applying it back in the workplace. So how do you leverage both? Uh, we've tried experiments with it. Some of it has worked, some of it is not. But whenever it has worked, I think people have given resounding feedback for the fact that, you know what, content acquisition is possible online, but reflection and getting them to actually push them a little harder and think of, okay, how will you apply this back in the workplace? What will change? How will I show up differently? Those kind of things is happening. So mix of an online versus an offline play is what we're looking at. But I think the first biggest premise is, how do you make learning a priority for individuals? Because individuals know that without learning they will not grow, yet they don't prioritize this over anything else, right? Like, so that's the irony. But those are the challenges that I have.
Okay. Now this brings to the next question that, okay, you have created an ecosystem, you have created an environment wherein people are allowed to gain and share knowledge, but how do you measure the effectiveness of a contemporary learning culture? And what, in your eyes, what could be the key metrics that organizations should track whether they are moving in the right direction or not?
Like, I want to take it first.
Sure, no problem, Vidya. Thank you. So, Vivek, there isn't a there is a run-of-the-mill metrics which we provide, right? Which is an L&D usual metric, which we go back to the business and say this many hours people did, this is what they learned, this many how completion happened, blah blah. These are regular one. But the way we function, Vivek, right, is is separate, I mean, different measures for different programs, right? Otherwise, you can't have one single approach for all the programs, especially if you're talking about leadership. The objective of the leadership programs are completely different. So we customize the program outcome and ensure that it is absolutely aligned to the fundamental objective of the program. Now, if let me give you an example, right? Maybe one or two examples. If you're talking about a high potential program, a leadership development program, right, where it's close to a 10 to 12 months of program for us, right, where we are talking about, we pick up some of the high pods and we are preparing them for key critical roles in the organization. That could be delivery partner or customer success, or we have CTOs at verticals, different business units, right? So those are measured in terms of how many of those roles, right, internal roles get fulfilled with these leaders, potential leaders who are going through that. That's one measure for my high potential. Now, that the outcome of that high potential is also my succession planning, right? How strong is your succession planning? How many people are there, and how many of them are? So these are all something which states, right, how many of them are ready by 6 months and how many of them are ready by 1 year and 2 year. Now you pick that 1 year and 2 year and put them into a high pod program, right? And then you see how the roles are being fulfilled. So that's maybe a metric for high pod. Now, if I'm looking at let's say we have a Winspire program, which is for women leader. Now, while it is, see, the way we run it, there are two angles to it, right? One is it's a good to have program. Honestly, that's one objective, to ensure that it's a good to have program, right? The other intent of the program is, are we building the right, are we giving a platform for all our mid-level women leaders to have a network? Are they able to create that network, right? And what we do is we enable this whole piece with mentoring, right? So there is no metric for that. We don't capture anything. We ensure that Brillio competency, leadership competencies are drilled them. We go through that whole competency, but the overall outcome of the program is, how do they feel about it? How do they feel about this whole organization, right? Are they getting the right kind of suggestions, right kind of things like that from the mentor? So that's basically how for a Winspire program, which is a women leadership program. Now, if I move to a technology program, fresher program, of course, deployability is definitely my key KRA, right? So if I have let's say 25 people, how many people am I able to deploy? So we have a concept called cost holiday, which is 4 months, right? In that 4 months, we bundle formal training, we have mentoring, We have some practice sessions and all shadowing and all of that. So by the time they finish that 4 months, they have to be deployable. Right. And if they are not deployable, then it hits my KRA, right? So those are, so for every program, Vivek, we have a very customized way of looking at what the outcome is and ensure that all those outcomes which we are defining is absolutely aligned to the business goals.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Eric?
Vidya, want to go next before?
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Eric. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we have two frameworks to look at our programs, the way we measure our learning. The one piece most L&D professionals look at is Kirkpatrick's model, where we look at from an L1 to an L4. At least most of our BU-led interventions are somewhere between L3 and an L4. And when we say L3 and L4, I'll give you an example, it'll be easier. So if let's say if we have, let's say a skill development program for supply chain folks within Flipkart, what ends up happening is after the skill, so the satisfaction of the program is somewhere between L1 and L2. Basis the program, there is also multiple other interventions that we do during the journey. And as a result, if there are behavior shifts that happen that we measure with respect to L3, we don't stop by there. We end up looking at what are the business productivity output or the kind of productivity reduction, like in terms of time taken to deploy a particular, deploy a particular product to the end consumer. Has that reduced significantly or not? So that's an L4 for us, and hence cost savings. How much has it been? At least 30-40% of our programs are in the L4 category, L3/L4 category. We have central programs like these manager programs, leadership programs. Many of them we are getting into the L3 category. So we are trying to figure out if there are evidences of behavioral shifts. So we have an indicator called, we have 7 questions in our engagement survey where we measure people on engagement index. We target managers who have low scores, and then we sort of measure and see, we have an interim measurement where we see that have the scores improve over a significant period of time. And that's probably how we look at it. The other way we also look at impact, and from a ROI perspective, is we use NK's framework, which is, he's a CLO for Ramco System. He's created this framework, which is framework of impact, where there is satisfaction, efficiency. It's similar to L1 to L4, but it also areas where we can significantly create business, accelerate our business outcomes. So those are the 2-3 ways. Or how many lesser meetings need to be done to close a deal. So those are the kind of things that we look at, measuring the way we look at that.
Okay, very good
Basically,
points.
depends upon the roles.
Sorry, you're saying something, Vivek?
Yeah, I was just mentioning that what Eric was suggesting, that basically it depends upon the KRA or the role of an employee, and based on that, probably the matrix would differ, right?
Yeah, most of the things what Eric mentioned and Lekha mentioned, we do follow build versus buy. We do have a very good a program for our women employees. We call it as She Leads. So there is a heavy critical organization level problem statements will be given to them so that they network across the organization and bring a solution for that, and they establish networking skills. We give the target of promotion as the outcome. End of the program after 6 months to leadership, we showcase that how many She Leads participants got promoted, how many are able to really stage themselves at that level. So many of these measures, and it is somehow, Vivek, I feel it is little easy in the technical program to measure the return on investment. Whenever there is a business requirement, we get a demand, we get a business requirement, and we map it, and once the training is completed, we see how many of them have been deployed onto those roles. But when it is a bigger journey, when it's a full stack program, when it is an extensive journey of 3 to 4 months programs, what we build, yes, L&D has a bigger role to find the return on investment and make sure that we convince to the leadership or to organization that these kind of programs have yielded well. So recently, when I was working on, we made the return on investment showcased in 4 stages. One is how it helped the organization. Second, how it has helped the market to enhance our market branding. Third thing, how it has helped us to get the more partner ecosystem support. In the images of our partners like AWS, Microsoft, and many partners, how our talent transformations have proved that yes, DXC is there and how it is helping our client. So all 4 ways, the business outcome, we try to showcase it to business. That's helping us to what to call prove that an L&D's work is really adding a lot of value.
Okay, thanks, Vidya. And my next question, while we have covered most of it, but are we seeing any new trends which are shaping the future of learning culture in an organization? And how prepared are we when we look at these trends which are shaping up in the near future? So is there any specific which you would like to talk about? Any new trend which you foresee is quite relevant and is shaping the future of the learning culture? Vidya, Lekha?
Go ahead, Vidya.
Yeah, go ahead, Lekha.
Okay, sure. One of the biggest things what I have seen, right, in last 20 years or so, Vivek, is earlier when we were just starting our career, right, there was a lot of focus on role-based learning, right? Today it is a skill-based learning.
Correct.
Right? So we are preparing our employees to either grow vertically or grow horizontally, right? If I connect back to the system which we have in place, we are asking the employees to pick up what your aspirations are. Your aspirations could be anything, right? So we are actually preparing them for their aspirations and of course doing a good for the organization in that way, right? So you are getting, if somebody wants to let's say for a technology track, if somebody wants to continue to be a technologist and then pick up a role of an architect, so be it. But the same person can also move into a managerial role. And so it's a complete skill-based learning in terms of, and that'll help organization because you have a very fungible set of talent, right? You can move people around because they have a spectrum of skills, right? So I think that's the major shift which we have seen. The other thing which I will basically combine two things. One is post-COVID, this whole remote working has made learning also remote, right? While there are resistance to change, leaders also resist, employee also resist, but I think overall everybody wants to learn from the comfort of their house or wherever, right? So I think that's a big shift which we have seen, and that pushes us to ensure that we democratize learning for every employee, right? We can't say that only this section of the organization would learn something like this and the other section would learn something like this. So democratization of learning to ensure that everybody has something to learn which is well defined for their aspirations, and of course with in combination with what the project or the customer or the organization wants. So I think that's the bigger shift. The last thing which I want to call out is, of course, I'm not talking about AI and all of that because everybody is talking. So every 2 years, there is something new which comes and then we get hit by, I remember the cloud thing which happened, right? Then everybody was doing cloud and Azure and all of that. Now the GCP. So those things will come and go. So I'm not talking about it. But one thing which is here to stay is this lot of data-driven learning which is happening, right? And when I say data-driven, is there's a lot of learning which is being customized or which is being tailored basis some data and basis the analysis which you have done, right? Are we 100% there? No. Is it a good thing to have? Yes, it is a good thing to have, right? We still have to see how we want to run that. I'll give you an example of my organization. As I said, going back to the same system because that's a core system. We understand each and every employee what skill he so it is bifurcated, right? We have skill and we have competencies also, and in competencies we have techno-functional competency and behavioral competency. So there are three legs of the whole how do we define a profile of an employee, right? For every skill or a techno-functional competency or a behavioral competency, we have 4 proficiencies, right? So when I download at the beginning of the year, when I download a report, it will actually say Lekha for this skill, let's say Python, she's at PL1, which is the first proficiency, needs to go to PL2, right? For competencies also, similarly, I have all the behavioral competencies and the techno-functional. So sometime in June, when I download, my data says Lekha is still at PL1, which means then we go back and dig and see what happened. Why is she still at PL1, right? Why is she not moved to PL2, which is supposed to be her expected proficiency? Then you go back, drill and say, hey, Lekha, you've not learned anything. Why have you not learned anything? So, and then we create a program or a journey or something like that. So I think these are the 3 key things, Vivek, which I have seen as a shift in the overall learning ecosystem which we have.
Great. Vidya?
Yes, Vivek.
Anything
I
apart
think,
to what
yeah,
Lekha has mentioned?
I think she covered everything. Only the one point which I can add, most of the things what she mentioned, we do skill-based learning, adding it to KRA, KPAs, and personalized learning is one which is based on this, so much of data analysis which is available. Organization can leverage the data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and implement all these tools to develop what this person is good and how he or she is learning, how is the learning trend of the people, and guide them to learn something new. So many individual personalized learning is what we should focus on. Implementing may help us to provide exactly what business is looking for, and also that it may help for our retention.
Okay, thank you. Eric?
I think one of the biggest trends that at least that I'm seeing for now is hyper personalized learning. And I say for hyper personalized, these are it's almost like delivery just in time, just at the moment where you need the most and the struggles that you need the most. Right now, learning is sort of like an event. You need to have some preparation before you get to wherever we need to get to. So making learning relevant for all at the time of need. So that's one. The second one, which is also very critical and important, is measurement of learning, and tying threads and knots to ensure that we'll be able to. The thing about ROI for learning is always in question in every board meeting, right? So how do we use learning measurements as tools? Because right now there are many indirect ways of looking at measurement, but how can we clearly say that X has led to Y or X has led to Z and stuff like that? So that's also another piece that is very critical. Other than and the last piece, which I think Lekha and Vidya spoke about, is gone are those days when we are roles and titles. I think we are a bunch of skills now, and if we are a bunch of skills, then how do we make so if people have first people need to have visibility of where do they want to move, by having a visualization angle of what kind of skills are needed, which are relevant, and what are the gaps that I have, and then how do I deploy learning accordingly. So I think 2-3 pieces around that will be the way forward.
Sure. Thanks, Eric, for this interesting perspective. Now, this brings to the end of this particular session today. And I'm afraid that is the only time which was allocated for this particular thing. But I'm sure that, keeping in view that this is such an interesting topic, we can go on, because there were many other questions as well, which were running in my mind after talking to you, which are still probably unanswered, and probably we will have another session to do a volume 2 of this particular session, because I really wanted to know the role of mid-level managers and the senior leaders, the role which they can play in creating the contemporary learning culture, but probably we will take it some other day. So, and I'm sure that, after hearing all of you, there are a lot of takeaways for the industry fraternity and all the peers who are there in the learning and development fraternity, and there are a lot of takeaways which are there for today for all of us, and we have gained a lot after hearing all of you in today's session. So this concludes our today's panel discussion. I would like to thank you, each one of you, once again for your time. And we will soon catch up. If not a virtual, probably I would love to do, probably a physical session, panel discussion when we meet next. So thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.